Welcome to the Grade 12 Algebra Sequence and Series section. Today we're going to be focusing on algebra and what are some of the common algebraic methods you're going to need to know when you're doing your problems in your final exams. Right, so let's go through a checklist of what we're going to need to know, and then we're going to go through some examples on each of these sections. Right, so looking at the first one, we're going to go through some sort of refresher on algebra. So just reminding ourselves, what is algebra? Some of the terminology used, what are the different algebraic operations that we use, and just refreshing our memories of what a variable is and what we actually do with them. After that, we're going to be looking at algebraic products and how to expand them, right, which is more commonly known as the distributive law, or FOIL, as some of you will have known, will have seen it called. And in that section, we'll just go over how do we do that again. Moving on from that, we look at its sort of inverse operation, which is known as factorizing. And there's different methods of factorizing. We're going to be looking at the popular ones, such as taking out a common factor, difference of two squares, sum and difference of two cubes. Right. Next section we're going to do is simplifying algebraic fractions. So what does this mean? This means that we're going to be looking at fractions that are composed of algebraic expressions, and then how to manipulate those fractions. Moving on from that, we're going to be looking at the exponential laws, right? Refreshing our memory of what those laws say, and then solving some problems in exponentials, so such as equations and so on. Next, we're going to be moving on to solving linear equations, right? So linear equations are where your degree of your what we call a straight line or a linear function equation, is just a single variable x. All right, so we're going to be looking at solving for one variable x in linear equations. We're going to be then moving on to solving quadratic equations. So that's solving where the degree of your what we call a polynomial, which I'll explain, is 2. So you're looking at what we call quadratic equations, right? Moving on from that, we're going to be solving some literal equations. So what are literal equations? These are just equations where you need to work out how to change the subject of the formula to find one of the key variables that you're interested in finding. So that's what literal equations are. We'll then go on to solving some linear inequalities, right? So inequalities are a bit different from equations, but again, we do very similar algebraic rules and operations on them. We'll then be working with surds, right? Equations and rationalizing surds. Surds is just a fancy word for taking some sort of root of an algebraic expression. We'll then look at the quadratic formula, how that's derived and how we use it in quadratic problems. We'll look intrinsically at the nature of roots. So what that means is we'll see how it's applied to quadratic equations and how to analyze quadratic equations using nature of roots. We'll then move on to solving quadratic inequalities. Again, inequalities follow certain algebraic rules, and we're going to be solving them in quadratics. So again, where the highest degree is 2 of your variable. In the last two sections, which we'll be going over, is solving simultaneous equations. So usually having two equations and solving for two variables at the same time. And then solving polynomial inequalities, which is similar to quadratic inequalities, and we look for the special algebraic rules and laws that we use there to solve for them. Right, so that's the introduction to the section. That's what we're going to be going through, and I'll see you in the next video.